2016, 2017, and 2017, 2018 school calendar. Hooray!
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Superintendent, board members. Each year, DeKalb County School District convenes a group of stakeholders to form a committee charged with exploring calendar options. The 2016 through 2018 calendar committee included representation from the following stakeholder groups: parents, students, school-level staff, principals, district-level staff, and community members. The members of the committee were selected first through a nomination process. There was a solicitation for nominations, and then they were selected randomly from the nomination group. In addition to that, the committee calendar co-chairpersons, I was one of them, Ms. Stacy Stepney, Director of K-12 Core and Electives, also in the room today, and Dr. Paul Kamek, Coordinator in Career and Technical and Agricultural Education. In accordance with policy AEA, the calendar committee developed calendar options by considering the number of days per year, number of days per semester, inclement weather and emergency days, testing windows, spring breaks, holidays, school breaks, and other metro area school districts' calendars. We also took into account election days and other potential conflicts. Stakeholders provided input through an online survey that opened on January 22nd, 2016 and closed at 11:59 p.m. on January 29th, 2016. The committee analyzed the responses and comments received from the 11,813 respondents before preparing the final calendar recommendations. The calendars are instructionally sound and align with similar-sized districts in close geographic proximity. The 2016 through 2018 school calendars contain the following features: 180 days of instruction. There are 88 days in the first semester and 92 days in the second semester. We made sure when we relative to semester end and start dates, we made sure that we ended the first semester recommendation before the winter break so that we have enough instruction front-loaded into the first semester so that we're not going into a testing season with more days in the second semester, if that makes sense. The first day of school for students on a Monday during the second week of August. 190 teacher contract days, including one evening workday comprised of 4 conference nights during the year as scheduled by each local school. Each conference night is 2 hours. 5 teacher work days before the first day of school. Holidays including Labor Day, Columbus Day, Dr. Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, of course Election Day. Fall break, Thursday through Monday. Thanksgiving break, 1 full week. Conclude the first semester prior to the winter break again to prevent students from taking final exams or state-mandated tests at the beginning of the second semester. 1 day in January for post-planning, pre-planning. A February break, which is a Friday through Monday. 1 professional development day in March. 1 inclement weather day. Spring break, the first full week in April. Last day of school for students will be the 4th Thursday in May. And post-planning for second semester will be the 4th Friday in May. In your packet, you have several supporting documents that guided the committee's work, including the board policy that governs this work. In addition to that, you have an executive summary of the 2016 through 2018 District Calendar Committee. And this executive summary more or less provides an overview of the work that was done by the committee and the fashion by which it was done. It includes recommendations for the calendar. And the second page of the executive summary kind of gives you an overview of the breakdown of the calendar, looking at specific holidays. It gives you exact dates for when those days are. In your packet as well, you have the data analysis of the survey results for this survey. And I'll take a moment just to kind of go through that. I know that you have that with you, but I want to point out some things for your attention. Again, we had 11,813 responses. The executive summary for the data here does point out the different items in which respondents were asked to respond to. The first of which includes the stakeholder groups that respondents belong to. So in that first table, you'll see that there are several different stakeholder groups, as we mentioned before. 54% of our respondents were from the parent and guardian group. So we had a really diverse representation. As you can see, next up, 31% were certified staff, 2% administrators, so on and so forth. So we felt we had a really good sample, a diverse sample of respondents to the survey. There's also a second graph that kind of gives you just a visual breakdown of who those folks were. Item number 2, which speaks to whether we asked to inform the process. Again, this survey was not a voting tool. It was just to inform, the committee in terms of recommendations to the superintendent, ultimately to the board. And so with that being said, the question, the guiding question was whether the participant or the respondent would like to start this 2017-2018 school year 1 week earlier and to incorporate a fall break. So we listened to concerns about whether participants wanted a full fall break in the winter, and in order to do that, you have to start school a week earlier. So we needed that feedback from our responders. And as you can see, strongly agree with 24.24%, strongly disagree with 40.05%. So our respondents, for the most part, if you look at the somewhat disagree, and strongly disagree distribution on that graph, indicated they did not want to incorporate a fall break, thus having to return back to school a week earlier. The next graph takes a look at the breakdown of the responses by the stakeholder group. So you can see parents and guardians all the way through students who were also surveyed as well and asked to provide their opinion. And on the last page of this data report, you have, we had comments. It was item number 3 on the questionnaire was whether the participant wanted to provide a general comment about the process or their thoughts. We had 2,353 comments. Of that breakdown, 57% of them had a concern or expressed some concern over a fall break, thus starting school a week earlier. 25% of them agreed with the fall break, and then the 18% other category were those folks who maybe had suggestions about other things like election days and so on and so forth that they wanted the committee to consider. So that is the breakdown of the data report for you. And lastly, in your packet is the general information the committee put together. It gives an idea, again, of when we started, the timelines, meeting dates, so on and so forth, and also includes the state information regarding the inclement weather emergency days and information provided by our legislators. In addition to that, the last few pages we did a huge analysis of other districts in the metro. We wanted to make sure we were aligned and that we were using best practice. And that chart kind of gives you an opportunity to see where other districts are in terms of holidays, pre-planning, post-planning. So we made sure we followed that to a T as a committee. And last but not least, the last 2 items in your packet are the actual proposed calendars. Again, there's one for 2016-2017, and there's also one for 2017-2018, and it includes all of the items that I mentioned before. Mr. Chairman, subject to any questions, we request that this item be placed on the consent agenda.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll have no discussion on that. Mr. Jester, I thought
See, he just always favors Mr. Jester.
no, well, my advice over here says Jester's first. And, okay.
Boy, I mean, what's been happening from that end of the day? I don't know whether I want to go outside or not. Thanks, Mr. Jester. I just want to commend you all and the hard work, Dr. Green, that was put into this, and being able to see a copy of the survey, see the breakdown, and seeing the actual results. I think that's important, and to be able to see the aggregate numbers and all of that come together. So a lot was put into this, and that you considered the voter days, that make sure that people can get in to vote, because I saw that. I shared with you all the other day that I saw that as a comment somewhere where people were complaining that when they come to vote that the children are still in school, and that was one of the greater concerns. So I'm glad to hear that we're listening to the people, we're listening to the staff, we're listening to everyone, and taking that all in consideration and coming up with a 2-year calendar, and also that week in Thanksgiving, that that entire week. So there are a lot of pluses to this, and I appreciate the hard work. And Mr. Phillips, thank you so much for your great report.
You're welcome. Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Jester, you want to give your time up to someone else?
No, I'm ready whenever y'all are ready.
Okay, Mr. Jester.
All right. So the school calendar is obviously extremely important to parents, and these decisions, shouldn't be made I don't think so quickly, in that this actual proposed calendar wasn't released until yesterday, I believe. So I mean, we've really only had 12 hours to look at this, and since it was released, I've reached out to the public, and I've been flooded with emails and messages and questions, and I'm just having a hard time making this decision with just 12 hours notice. Just a comment.
Okay. I just want to, I'm sorry, Dr. Johnson. Okay. No.
I'm ready to jump in now.
He's been nice enough for one day.
I've reached my limit. I do have a few comments, and I have been the person sort of pushing for this 2-year calendar for 3 years, so finally. Thank you for coming. We're glad you're here. But I have a couple global comments, which some of the staff will remember. I'm a big proponent of us identifying inclement weather days, except I look at these, we only have one identified in each of the year. And we know when we have a weather event, it's usually going to require more than one inclement weather day. I think the last calendar had 3. When I look at other districts, they usually put 3 in there. And that's really from a planning standpoint, so that parents know that if we have to go, barring the governor just saying, forget it, and you don't have to do it, say, look at our... I'm a proponent of us making those days up. I know there are some systems that take it very seriously, and it's particularly acute in schools with block schedule because every day is really 2 days. So I'd like to ask if we could identify some additional inclement weather days so that we have them. I think it's just important from a planning standpoint. Second, before we do some, and I'd be comfortable if we can agree that there'll be 3 to defer to you to figure out what days make most sense before we put the final publication. I just think, again, we should be giving parents notice of what they have to be on the lookout for. Second, I get blocking out election day in 2016, presidential election day, even cycle year, big elections. Historically, we have not taken off, and that's true of most districts on the odd number years because they're just not big elections. Nobody shows up. And I raise that because it takes a day off the first semester, and one of the things refrains I get from, particularly because I have one school in my district that's a block scheduled school, every day is equivalent to 2 days. So when we're 2 days under on the 180, when we're 88 days in one semester, we're almost a full week basically missing of class time. So I'd like to see if we have some room to massage this a little bit. And I know that right now we've got 3 days blocked out in the October timeframe for both years. If that's the case, if we feel that that's the better judgment to have 3, I'd at least like to look at taking election day off 2017 off as a day off, so we put 89 days and we shift that day off into the second semester again. It's just a constant refrain I get because of the block schedule that every day really literally has double the impact. I throw this out for discussion, I guess. It's not really a committee of the whole, but I make a motion, or we can do it by consent. Is there some room that we can massage this a little bit to reflect?
And I can also add, sir, if that's okay, Mr. Superintendent, that the board policy dictates that the Green can come back and ask to reconvene the committee to address that particular day, right? So anything on the calendar, although it's a 2-year calendar, if there was a particular concern that arose, whether it was something that, if fiscal policy drove the days or whatever the case might be, we'd have to come back to the table. So we can't revisit those at any point.
Well, I'm just saying rather than publishing it and then having to republish it, which creates all sorts of confusions because inevitably somebody will have the wrong calendar stuck on their calendar at home. I'd like to just resolve it if there's some comfort about maybe pushing at least another classroom day into the first semester on these schedules. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but again, back in the block scheduling. No. I'm just saying I'm looking. There's 3. No. I'm not looking at 3 days. There's 3 days off in October in each of these years. So there's one place we might have a little room because we haven't historically had 3 days off anyway. And then for the 2017-18, we're taking election day off in 2017, but those are historically nobody. Unfortunately, the way our democracy run, nobody really shows up because there's nothing driving voters into that election. There might be a couple of municipal elections, but odd number election years in Georgia just don't really, I think they don't get huge turnout, quite frankly. And so I would just the more balanced the calendar. Yeah. So that's 1 year I think we could also, and shift if we were to shift or not shift it. But I'd love to get, if we can, as close to 90 days a semester as possible, taking into account all the other things that you've mentioned.
Mrs. Turner?
In considering the suggestions of my colleagues here, will this delay us publishing this calendar or getting it released, Dr. Green?
If we don't get a vote, we can't put it out. So we need to get a vote to get it out.
Because we,
Otherwise, then that delays people in their vacations and all. So we're up against it.
Or unless we just figure it out here. I mean, I understand one option is go back to the calendar committee, but we can also, since it's ultimately we're the people who have to decide on the calendar. But before making a motion, I wanted to sort of get your comfort level with some of the things.
I'm okay with the
I really wasn't finished, but that's okay.
You
No,
are,
but
you are a female.
All I was saying is we have the pressure to get this calendar published, and we asked this: when is the calendar going to be ready? When is the calendar going to be ready? And I do recognize, and I'll say this: I come from a very small world, and I've been sequestered, if you will, where probably the most input I ever had on the calendar were 10 people at the most. And here we got 11,000 people. I just can't imagine that. But I commend you for getting through 11,000 responses. So certainly there's been input, right? And so I'm not sure, and I'm trying to understand what you're asking, Mr. Jester, because if we've gotten 11,000 responses who've given some credible input that helped us to even get these two documents ready, what more could we get? I'm trying to understand what it is you're asking, Mr. Jester.
What I would say is that we can't present the calendar and then have a respectable conversation with the public in 12 hours. Yeah, they've gotten our response, they've gotten our suggestions, but the public didn't see it until yesterday. So I need more than 12 hours to discuss them with that. You may have gotten those, all those responses, but since that calendar's been published, and I realize this is, like you said, catch-22, but it is what it is, and I can't make a decision in 12 hours. I can't talk to my constituency, my people in 12 hours. I am getting flooded with emails and questions and suggestions, and that's just where I'm coming from.
If I may add, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Your response, and Dr. Marley.
The attributes to the survey were also, of the calendar were also in the survey items. So I think before they started the questions, they read how many days, how many work days. What the calendar provided here is the exact dates, but we did mention, you'd have this holiday, that holiday. So just to condense the survey and not make it so long, we try to give them just the highlights so they know exactly which holidays, what dates, and then we formalize it in the visual representation you see here for purpose of today's meeting.
Dr. Marley.
Here again, this information has been out here, and we had many sessions. We all had an opportunity to have input to say yay, nay, or whatever we thought. We've pushed and pushed and pushed, as Mrs. Turner said, for this calendar to be provided earlier and earlier. So we got it. We have a committee that was put together. All the stakeholders who were supposed to be there were part of this. They had 11,000 surveys they had to muddle through, go through, and come up with what they needed. And the results are there. So I'm wondering, when you begin to look at it, because every parent had an opportunity to respond to the survey and give their input. Am I right? So now we're coming post-decision after it's actually published. And so I'm beginning to wonder, what kind of questions and how many people are we going to field questions from about the calendar that they didn't already have an opportunity to give their input on so that we can make an informed decision? I think that when you look at it, it's evident right there. One of the things I asked, and I said to Dr. Green and to the committee, is that we cannot come back and try to yield to personal, individual. There's too many people. And so we went through that last year. We can't please this group or the other group. Then I'm going to be calling up and say, why can't you please my group? So we have to begin to actually be able to make some decisions and stick by them. We all, the board, we knew what was coming up. Every little item. I had an in-depth understanding of exactly what was going to be in, and I appreciate that, Dr. Green and the committee, Mr. Phillips and everybody else on that committee. So at some point, that's why we are a board, policy and decisions, moving things forward. We have to begin to ask ourselves, why do we delay some things instead of just going ahead and making a decision? Mr. Phillips has already said if there's something that comes up later, we can do it. But that we're not here for individual, and we do want to make sure that we're meeting our constituency's needs, but the major need is the needs of these children, and not the adults who are out there who might have some other things. But I agree, parents want to know, when can I take my vacation? When is school going to start? When is this going to take place? So it's here. So we've got to begin to look at why do we delay things instead of just looking at, and how much are we going to discuss with people about the calendar? It's in black and white. It's up there. Going to get calls. Everybody's not going to agree, but we have to decide at some point as a board to say we're going to move forward and stop delaying things. That's been one of my biggest pet peeves since I've been on this board, is that we delay. And especially when you have the information days, sometimes weeks ahead of time. So for what it's worth, I'll give my little humble opinion on this thing. Let's move forward.
You're on a roll today, Dr. Morley. Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Chair. Great conversation. I'll keep it quick. I'm in a position to support and approve the 16-17 calendar. I do think it would be prudent for us to delay approving the 17-18 just for 30 days. We'll approve, but I do feel it's important based on Mr. Jester's perception and that we've only had the calendar since yesterday afternoon, I think. But it is a year and a half from now that it will be implemented. I think it would be prudent to have just another 30 days of community input, and if it's the same results, then we can validate, look, you had a month to look at it, give us your input. And so that's just a suggestion for me.
Dr. Irwin.
I think like it was stated earlier, we can always come back and amend this, right?
Yes,
Calendar.
per board policy,
So
absolutely.
it's really no need that it sits for 30 days if you can come back anytime and amend the calendar. So I'm with Dr. Moore that we go ahead and move this forward, and if we need to come back and address some issues, we can.
Can I respond to it just real quick? My philosophy is if you're going to do it right the first time so you don't have to redo it. And that's the purpose of my delay, to ask for community input instead of approve and then come back and correct it. And that's just my position. But thank you. I appreciate everybody's suggestions. Very healthy.
Mr. Orson.
Yeah, and I haven't been suggesting any delay. I'm just trying to fix a very particular problem to some of our schools, to Dr. Morley's point about looking out for the students, because of just the way the block schedule works. I think we could figure out both these calendars now. I'm just trying to get a little more balance in there to respect that it places an additional burden on our students and therefore on our teachers when they're somewhat out of balance in terms of days in a semester.
Okay, it's fairly obvious that, and don't let me assume board members, my fellow board members. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just one quick question. When looking at the 88 days and 92 days that the calendar has been broken into, how does that match up with the surrounding districts?
I'm going to defer to Ms. Stepney. She did a lot of research on that area.
Are they sitting close to 88 days as well?
Yes. On our summary chart provided in your packet, we gave our overall days, and so when you look at Atlanta Public Schools for 16-17, they have 89 and 91. Clayton County, 87 and 93. Cobb County, 91 and 89. City Schools of Decatur, 88 and 92. Fulton did not have it posted. Gwinnett, 90 and 90. Henry County, 86, 91. And Rockdale, 89 and 91. And it's noted that Henry County did not build a 180-day calendar. And for 2017-18, the school districts that have their calendars posted: Clayton County, 92 and 88. Cobb County, 91 and 89. Gwinnett, 91 and 89. Henry County, 92, 86.
Okay, fellow board members, it's fairly obvious that we will not get it on the consent agenda. However, if it's anything that we can work out by the time we take action tonight, I would encourage all of us to do that and give you input so that we can take a vote tonight and as an action item. And of course, you know the process if that doesn't occur. But from that standpoint, is that something that we could all live with right now? Okay, we'll do that.